I am Gil Adani. I will first I'll introduce myself, or why the information I'm going to give you is coming from the field that I work in. I am a lawyer, a CPA, MBA, but my basic knowledge is a programmer. I started to program when I was 15. I'm 48. I used to be a captain in the Israeli army and the intelligence corps. And I founded HackerU 22 years ago. Back then, the name of a hacker was not familiar, and it was like a startup, started then. But ever since, I am working in the field, and I will, in a couple of fields, and based on this knowledge, I'm going to give you some advices for young startups or companies that want to develop new technologies. What we do basically in HackerU, the main activity is training. We train big organizations. We train clients that want to enter the field. We train governments, and we train also universities around the world. Now, this allows us to have access to Israeli top-notch leaders and startups in the cybersecurity market. We're working today, hundreds of our instructors coming from the field, working in startups companies. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Israel, but Israel is a nation called as a startup nation. So we have a lot of startups regarding, especially in the cybersecurity area. And since our instructors and some of our students are working in those companies, we kind of understand what is the field and what is the need. Today, HackerU works in globally, from the US market all the way to the Philippines, if you recognize the flags on the pictures. We work with big organizations like police, military, banks, universities, like I said before, and many kind of big companies. We work with a lot of partners and customers. We have thousands of customers around the world, globally. We can understand by training them to understand their basic needs, their security problems, to understand what they need, where is their vulnerabilities, and what do they need to invest in order to solve this problem. So based on this knowledge, as I said before, with Prytech is a company, VC, that invests in many startups, in many domains. As you can see here, Prytech is investing in cybertech with us, with HackerU technology, also with education technologies, and in other fields that you can see here, from fintech and to AI tech, HR tech. And why am I showing all of this? Because we as a company that combine with Prytech in some of the companies we invest together, we'll have to find what is the right way for a startup to really succeed. Because when you invest money in companies, you really want to assess what is the probability of that company to succeed. And this number of companies that we already invested in can show what is after my conclusion, I will show you why do we choose those kind of companies or not the others. As you can see, the global operations that we are working today, as I said before, we're working from especially the US market, but we go also to Africa. We opened a branch here more than a year ago, and we are operating here in Moscow. And we also work in Philippines, Singapore, Australia. And one of the major ideas that I'll develop later is when you open a startup or technology, it should run globally. You should aim it from the beginning to work globally, otherwise you will have problems later. Now, I don't know your background, but probably most of you know about all the threats we are facing all the time. And those are threats that are new threats are coming all the time. And startup, the idea about startup is to find new things, new technologies, new threats, and to find a new way to protect against them. Now, there are startups all over the world, and many, and only it really depends on where, but in Israel, 95% of them doesn't succeed. So I mentioned like 5 out of 10 would really cross the first 2 years. So in order to succeed, you have to choose the right path, or the right, you have to make a lot of good decisions in order to succeed. One of them is wrong and you're out of the game. So one of the things that I want to talk about is what domain should new startups can focus, because there is a demand, because it's a growing market. And these are the key focal points that I think that startups should focus on. IoT, working more on detection instead of prevention, automation, and also Dockers and microservices. These are the 4 domains that I think today they are the most potential for startups to succeed. IoT, which is familiar by most of you, I will go just to understand the big potential. IoT is one of the biggest, or the growing market. As you can see by Gartner saying that in 2020, we will have 26 billion units. You can imagine it's 3.5 multiplied by the population. And it's growing rapidly. IoT is taking a part of our life in any field, and it's a growing market. As I said before, startups should always focus on growing markets, which especially fast-growing market. And what is the problem with IoT? Because IoT, usually the security concept is how to isolate, not to be connected. IoT is the other way around. When you work with IoT, you want to be with the internet, you want to be connected all the time. And when you are connected, as the rest of the world now is all connect, you're becoming more and more exposed. So either for smart homes, as you can see, homes and buildings, one of our startups that we developed inside our incubator is smart homes, which are secured. One of the big problems with smart homes today is that most of them are not secured. So imagine you are installing a smart home in your house, and anyone from this outside can penetrate open your door or look at the camera. So this is an area that is really developing. The houses become more and more smart. Hope the people are getting smarter during the time, but since we are not, we should focus on how to secure those houses. And machine-to-machine communication all over the world is like getting in more and more vulnerable. And I will give you some examples. One of the main problems with IoT is the devices that are working in this field are old or didn't design to, when they manufacture, when you have a problem and you want to manufacture an IoT, doesn't matter which field, usually the startup or the founder is not taking care of security measures. So in designing the security from the first place, so most of the IoT today are not secure or efficient secure. Because there is no computing resources, it's a small micro computing device. There is not enough protocols that any device should follow. Each company finds their own protocols. And since you cannot, and the big problem is, there are not enough experts in IoT security. One of the big issues that we are looking for is to find instructors or workers who are expert in IoT, and this is a big lack. So when you develop a new product, if you are not taking care of security, most likely you will have problem at the end So as hard as it is, so either you are focusing on security for IoT, this is one of the major ideas that I'm trying to say here. This problem gives you all the risk you probably know. I will not go into details, but the big problem is that I will give you an example of breaches that we see day to day, every time. In the company, we are also doing pen testing and looking to see vulnerable in devices. So one of the big devices, probably, I don't know whether you know about this breach. This was one of the famous one. VTech technology made a tablet for kids. Also, IoT, connected to the internet, tablet for kids could be very, and since they didn't plan the security right, it was breached, and more than 6 million details about kids, 6 million kids were exposed. You can say, what's wrong about knowing details about the kids? The problem is that every kid has to put their parents, and the parents has all the information like passwords that they use, usually the same password, secret questions or questions that you usually give to any site that you want to do, things about yourself, who helps hackers use this information to, for bad things. So this is an example for IoT product that was not secured enough. So today we can see companies that are working to secure IoT. These are a list of companies, 3 companies that I choose to show that startups that are working in this field are flourishing, but since it's a huge market and it's a growing market, there is room for many startups in this field. As if you say like Crete Defense is working on the endpoint security, as of the other ones is looking for medical devices. Imagine you are working with your, today a lot of medical devices were not planned enough to be secured. So today startups that are bringing another layer of security to defend those, because you cannot restructure everything from the beginning. So like this company in the middle scenario, who is working with, especially on devices or medical devices. But if you work with, you just need to find the field that you are expert in and develop security for IoT in this field. As I see it now, this is one of the biggest problem we are heading, and not enough companies to support it. I heard, I was sitting here in the crowd and I saw a lot of companies talking about prevention and moving from prevention. Today it's also a trend, because when there is no way you can stop all the hackers coming to your system. There are all the time new Trojan horses, 0 days that comes together. So usually, and finding in the darknet more and more vulnerabilities about companies. So the issue that every company needs to understand, it will be hacked. So today, instead of investing in prevention, companies are more and more investing in detection. Okay, I will show you like shift from prevention to detection is what startup really need to focus on. And I heard here a couple of companies talking about this, so I will not elaborate more, but using machine learning and using big data. And every company or every startup today that comes with these 2 buzzwords will be able to raise money more easy. And it's not just because it's a buzzword, it's because this is where the world is going. You need to detect, and by that you have to use big data and you have to use machine learning, AI, in order to fight those hackers. And the last tools that also being developed sharply in the last couple of years is to use decoys. Decoys and honeypots. Probably you heard of it, and I will give you some example of some companies that are working in this, like traffic security. And all of these three, they are moving away from prevention, as I said before, and they used to put traps for hackers to go and to find, if you have a hacker moving around in your company, you should put a trap instead of preventing him to enter. And then you know you have a hacker inside your facilities, you can respond. The one elusive, which is helping when there is an attack, when attack is occurring, this is the place when you need forensics to help the incident response team. Also, when a breach is being made and there is a problem, companies that are working in helping the incident response team is something that will, 1 minute. Oh, it was quick, okay. So I will go faster. Automation. Automation is something that there is a huge cybersecurity skill gap. This is one of the major ideas. There is a problem, there is a lack of something like 3.5 million workers in this field in the next couple of years. We in HackerU are training many thousands, dozens of thousands around the world, but still, it's a big gap that will not close. The idea is how to work with automation. Automation, like, if I will show you one company that I know, Kronos, is a company that is doing automatic penetration testing. Instead of hiring a lot of pen testers around the world, to find your vulnerabilities, Kronos is doing exactly that. It's a cybot inside your organization that penetrates their organization 24/7. It's one example for how to find automation instead of if you use automation, you can reduce the amount of workers and you can find solutions, especially when the workers are so expensive and hard to get. Microservices is something more for programmer to understand, but today, instead of virtual machines that is used to let programmers work in environments, today we are using a lot of Dockers, any sort of them. Dockers, in a nutshell, is to give you like a virtual machine, which is much more efficient. It's a new field, very growing field, and in this field, there is still a lot of problems with security. So as I said before, if you want to develop a startup, you should focus on the fields that are growing fast and have problems with security. And this is one of the things, like JFrog, an Israeli company who is investing in this, supposed to sell, as I said, 100 million by next year. And all of this because they opened this field which has no other companies. So I will, as I managed to say, so thank you, and it was nice talking to you. Good evening.